Hi, guys. Welcome to the Simple Doesn't Mean Easy podcast. We are here working at simplifying things in our lives, one day at a time, one simple step at a time. Don't get me wrong, this way of simplifying things, this way of working at eliminating some junk in our lives, whether it be food or things that are wasting our time, it doesn't necessarily make things easier, but it absolutely makes things better. So I'm glad you're here. I'm your host, Michelle Visser, and today we're talking about my absolute favorite way to preserve food. And we're talking about why and some details about it. And I'm excited about this episode because this is a topic that I personally get really excited about. Before we dive into this episode, I have a quick question for you. What do you think might be the most underrated crop in the average garden? I think it's garlic. This was the first year I planted garlic and I'm in love. Go to territorialseed.com/simple to see what I'm talking about and grab a discount code. I love the fact that you can plant garlic in the fall when it's a slower time, not in the craziness of spring. And I love that there's two options to choose from: hardneck, which gives you a spicier flavor, and two, harvest, because you can harvest the scapes before the garlic. But the soft neck garlic gives you a longer shelf life. So you know what? I recommend you try some of both. territorialseed.com/simple. It's also a fantastic companion plant. I planted mine by my broccoli and Brussels sprouts, and it has helped repel the cabbage moths all summer long. Don't wait though, because the garlic will sell out quickly. It does every year. If you wait, it might be gone next week. So go to territorialseed.com/simple and take advantage of the discount as well. Okay, so with the current state of the world, I mean, it's been this way for many years now. Maybe I shouldn't say current, but I don't know about you, but I really don't have much confidence in our food supply chain, and preserving food, getting better at it has been even more important to me now than before 2020. And especially foods that I can grow myself. Like I have a huge desire to be able to grow from seed as many things as possible, not just things that we need for nutritional value in our meals, but even things that I want for pleasure. And I've been working for years now at growing my own chicory so I can make my own tea that tastes like coffee. And on top of that, I'm growing food for the pigs while I'm growing the roots that I'll grind into my coffee alternative. So it's just win-win. And anything like that gets me really, really excited. I walk around too often saying things like, well, when the world collapses, this, and this. And I mean, I am well aware it might not happen in my lifetime, but I really have enjoyed knowing that when things hit the fan, if things hit the fan, there are a couple things that I could do pretty daggone well. And that gets me excited. It makes me happy. I will be the first to tell you there are 99 other things for every one thing that I could do that I absolutely can't do. So I'm not at all saying that I'm self-sufficient and that I'm a prepper and all of that, but it's been really interesting to see what I can take control of and what I can learn and get better at. So all of that to lead into the fact that I share a lot over on Instagram about dehydrating, because dehydrating is my number one go-to for ways to preserve my food. If I can grow something from seed, see it flourish in my garden, harvest it, dehydrate it, and have it preserved in my root cellar to use 2 years from now, not much makes me feel more accomplished. And a lot of times you guys will have questions for me, and it seems to be something that there's just a whole lot of questions around. I feel like, as weird as this seems to me, canning is more understood, more, oh yeah, I can, or oh yeah, I learned to can, or whatever. But when I share about dehydrating, it seems like there's a lot of people who are like, well, how does that work? And how do you know this? And how do you know that? So because of that, years ago, I decided, I really want to create a resource that pulls all of this together. And now I'm getting to the real reason this is the topic of today's episode. I feel like there should be drum roll and trumpets playing because I'm really excited to tell you guys. Today, I am rolling out something that I think is going to be really helpful, a resource you're really going to love. It's called Dehydrating Academy. And I've poured everything into it the past few years to make it a resource that is your go-to. Everything you need to know about my favorite way of preserving foods, whether it be herbs, fruits, vegetables, meats, even dog treats, and lots of different things you can do with the preserved food. So I'm really excited about it. If you want to know more about this, and of course, I have a very special coupon code for you because I'm announcing it here as one of the first places I'm announcing it. I made I made two special codes for you guys. If you're listening to this right when it's being released for the first 2 weeks and only 2 weeks, you can take advantage of the code early bird and you can save huge. Go to solelyrested.com/dehydrate and I will put a link there that goes to everything you want to know about this masterclass. And if you use the coupon code early bird, it's a slashed huge discount. After those 2 weeks, if you're catching this later, don't worry, use code podcast and it is a very nice savings that you can enjoy later as well. Okay, now that I've told you the exciting part, let me backtrack and let me explain to you why dehydrating is my favorite way to preserve food. This is one of probably the biggest questions I get from people. Why do you dehydrate? Why don't you can? Or why don't you just freeze it? So let me tell you why. Actually, I probably will forget some of them, but I'm going to do my best to remember all the reasons this is my favorite way to preserve food. First of all, I love that it's so lightweight. In fact, right before I hit the record button, I ran and grabbed just a few jars from my shelf. For those of you on YouTube, I thought, this is a really good thing that I might want to be able to show you. So I grabbed different things here. This is my jar of fermented tomatoes that's in my kitchen cabinet right now. I don't even know how many tomatoes this probably is. Oh, this is a lot of tomatoes. It's only a half gallon, so it's a quart worth of tomatoes here. But if I had this amount of tomatoes lined up on my counter, it would take up a lot of counter space right now. If I had this amount of tomatoes in pasta sauce that I'd canned, it would, I don't even know. I'm going to have to guess. I bet you it would be about 4 quarts, maybe 5 of tomato sauce. But when I have these tomatoes simply sliced and dried, it takes up so much less space. And these are going to be wonderful for years to come. So they last for a long time. They're so lightweight and they take up so little space. It's also very cost effective. You can even air dry. Let me see right here. I have some oregano. You can air dry. You don't have to have equipment. You don't have to have a fancy dehydrator. There is a lot in the masterclass that breaks down when it is important and when you can air dry. So there's definitely times you can and can't in different stipulations, but you don't have to have the equipment. You could air dry your herbs and it literally costs you nothing. I mean, unless you want to say you have to spend something for your storage jar, but I know you have some storage jars, right? And this is so different than, if you're canning, you have to always buy your new lids. The rims get rusted, your jars break in the canner, all of that. Or if you're freezing your foods, then you have the electric costs nonstop, right, to keep that freezer cold. And of course, you have to have a lot of space to have that freezer that you're putting your foods in. But dehydrating is so cost effective. And if you're dehydrating a decent amount of food, in no time at all, it's going to pay for your dehydrator if you do want to invest in a dehydrator. By the way, if you go to solelyrested.com/dehydrate, I said that really quickly, didn't I? /dehydrate. I do link to not one, but 2 dehydrators that I own, and I give you a breakdown of how they compare. And I really highly recommend both of them depending on your needs. And I also link to some equipment that I do use for dehydrating and that I recommend, but most of it's optional. So I think it's got to be the most cost-effective way you can preserve your food. Dehydrated food is shelf stable. Like I said, those tomatoes are going to be fine for many years. And herbs, I can't even tell you how long they last. I will tell you that when they smell, I'm showing my oregano on YouTube. I will tell you that one tip is the smell. Oh my goodness. I just got transported to an Italian pizza as I smelled my oregano. But when you open the lid, you'll notice the smell is amazing on your dehydrated foods. That smell will start to diminish, not be quite as strong as time goes on. And that's your cue to go, oh, I should be using this up, use more of it, etc. It doesn't happen often though. Any dehydrated food minimum is going to last you 2 years for sure. But if you think about it, it makes sense. All the moisture has been removed from the food. So it can be stored at room temperature for a long time. And room temperature is another key thing that I love about dehydrating. Doesn't have to be in cold storage, in the freezer, and it does really well. So also I think I'm on reason number 3 now. I love that you can turn your dehydrated foods into powders. This I'm showing on YouTube is my tomato sauce powder. I have my little directions attached for anybody, for my daughters, if they're making pasta sauce, so they know what to add, how much water to how much powder. But this is simply tomatoes like these that I've already shown you that I ground up after they were dehydrated. And then I added to them some other herbs, some dehydrated peppers, some salt, and some onion powder. I think that's everything. Oh, and you want something sweet if you're making tomato paste with your powder. So I did add maple sugar to my mix as well. And then I simply take 1 tablespoon of this and I add 2 to 3 tablespoons of water, mix it up, and it makes instant tomato sauce. You make it, thicker if you want a tomato paste. You can certainly make it thinner if you want more like a marinara sauce. But I love this for making tomato sauce. We eat a lot of tomato sauce in this house. I can't stand canning it. I have tried it numerous times. I hate how long it takes. I hate standing over that hot pot for hours upon hours. It's like 10 or 12 hours that you're watching this pot of boiling tomatoes. And anyway, but this I love. It's so much easier. And I love that when you go to make it, you can make exactly what you need. You're not going to have a half open jar of tomato sauce that gets stuck in the corners of your fridge that winds up getting moldy and you have to throw it away. There's no waste. I love that about it. Let's take a quick second and talk about what time of year it is. Cold and flu season is knocking at the door. And I love to rely on natural adaptogens now more than ever. Adaptogens are plants and parts of plants. They're herbs. They're the roots, the flowers, the berries of the plant, and they support our body's response to stress and to illness. Many of the active compounds in adaptogens actually help our immune system defend itself. The flavonoids, the amino acids, the minerals that you're going to find in any kind of herbal remedy is going to make it an excellent boost for whatever you're doing in your day to help you fight colds and flus. So instead of popping pills or just bearing with the seasonal cold and yuckiness, go to soullyrested.com/fall, FALL. Try out one or all of the delicious medicinal drink recipes that I share there. These are my favorite things to drink in the fall, and they're made from organic teas and medicinal botanicals. They're super easy to make, and I even have discount codes waiting for you there so you can try some of these drinks yourself. soullyrested.com/fall, FALL. If we're concerned about the nutrient quality of our food, we really need to think about the nutrient quality of our soil if we're growing some of our own food as well. I really can't recommend cover crops enough. They've kind of revolutionized the way that I garden. Cover crops are a living mulch. They suppress weeds, they attract beneficial insects, they control erosion, they hold moisture into the soil, and when the cover crops decay, they give nutrients back to the soil. So those nutrients are there and ready for my garden next spring. Go to solarrested.com/cover and find out what cover crops I recommend. Also, you'll find a really great cover crop guide that I link to at solarrested.com/cover. Was that number 3? So maybe number 4 I'm on. I love it that, this is kind of part of the powder. I'm going to backtrack. I love it that you can take any dehydrated food and make it into a powder and add that powder to any other food. So if you have picky eaters, you could dehydrate liver, chop it up, add some wonderful seasoning to it so it tastes good, and then put it in anything, in soups or even over top of the food before you serve it. It's a great way to add nutrients to your food. Of course, a common way that you could do it is make a powder out of something like spinach and kale and add that to your smoothies or your drinks. Okay, what I was going to say, moving on to number 5, dehydrated foods can include the part or the food in general that you might otherwise overlook or not want to eat. For instance, I love broccoli, love it, but I'm not really crazy about the stems. So before I learned to do this, I would feed the stems to the dogs and the dogs love it. But I realized, why not dehydrate my broccoli stems? And now I have zero waste. Mind you, poor Bixby is sad because he doesn't get his broccoli stems anymore. He really does like them. So he's not as happy about me dehydrating the broccoli as I am. But so now there's no waste at all. And I can dehydrate those stems and use them in any way you can imagine. Mainly what I do is I powder them along with things like kale and spinach, and I will put them in other foods, in soups and stews, and you're getting all those nutrients. Also, like I would never say that you can take an unattractive food in whatever way, if it's like way overripe, let's say, and make it better by dehydrating. Dehydrating is never going to improve the quality of your food, but what you can do is preserve it at its current state. And often that is actually good. So, for instance, I just don't like when bananas get a little bit mushy. I like them very slightly green, just turning ripe. But if they started to get brown spots on them, I'm not crazy about them. They're just a little too sweet and just too mushy for me. But if I dehydrate that same banana, oh my word, banana chips are delicious and I love them. So that's just one example. There's lots of other things I could come up with like that. Also, some people ask, is it easier to buy your dehydrated food than to just make it yourself? Like, why not buy it if you're like, okay, I think what I was getting at is why not just buy dehydrated mangoes instead of taking a mango, slicing it, filling your dehydrator and making your own? Mainly because when you're doing it yourself, you know exactly what's in it. If you're buying dehydrated food like dehydrated fruits, you don't know what else they have added to it to help it preserve for longer. And mainly with dehydrated fruits, you don't know how much sugar they've added. And often it's been a lot of sugar, and that's not necessary. There's natural sugar in it. It's delicious right out of the hydrator. So that's why I would prefer to do it myself. Not sure why I worded that so oddly in my list. So let me show you what else I have. Oh, also, I love dehydrating because I can forage for a lot of different botanical things, and I can dehydrate them myself and keep them to use in teas or to make tinctures. So many medicinal benefits. This one, if you're on YouTube, this is dandelions. I've done a lot of episodes on dandelions. It is a flower near and dear to my heart. I'll link some of those episodes in the show notes. But these are dandelions that I collected from my backyard last spring and I dried them, and I am working my way through them, using them for some medicinal teas. This is some yarrow. We've talked about this on previous episodes. I collected this yarrow on some walks on a nearby road and dehydrated it. And I use this in medicinal teas. And the last thing, same situation. These I collected from a field, one of our fields right here by our house. It is red clover. Wonderful benefits for menopausal women. I love adding this to my teas. Okay, so dehydrating allows me to even forage items and use them medicinally. And I have a whole unit in Dehydrating Academy about that very topic. And I give you recipes and other insights. So that just gives you a little bit of thoughts about dehydrating, how it compares to other means of preserving food, and why it is always my go-to. So I'm really, really excited that, I mean, anytime it takes a long time to accomplish something, like 2 years, and anytime that you pour a lot of yourself into creating something, you get excited, right? So it makes sense. I'm really excited about Dehydrating Academy, and I really do genuinely think this is going to up-level your kitchen. It is going to really change the way that you look at food and preserving it. And I think there are a lot of people out there like me, because I've met a lot of you on Instagram, because you guys come in my inbox and you tell me that you can relate to what I'm saying. You really don't like canning, or you don't even want to try canning, because it has a lot of drawbacks. It has a lot of pain points for a lot of people, especially if you're talking about pressure canning. That adds a whole nother level of complication. So a lot of people don't preserve their food. They either let it go bad, or they grow a lot in their garden, but they wind up giving a ton away because they don't know what else to do with it. And that just makes me so sad that people don't know you can dehydrate it. And it's so good. And then, by the way, I haven't even mentioned, like, these tomatoes. All you have to do is rehydrate them when you're ready to use them. So you can just get a bowl of warm water, soak your dried tomato slices in that bowl of warm water, and watch it plump up right in front of your eyes. And 20 minutes later, you have a plump tomato slice in your bowl. There are some foods, like a tomato, that it's not going to be the exact same when you rehydrate it. So we work through that in Dehydrating Academy, what the solutions are to that and ways to use the food if it's not quite exactly the same texture. But so good, guys. It's a game changer. It's a life-changing thing to be able to preserve your food and years later pull it off of your pantry shelf and have that same excitement all over again every time you open that jar, that this is amazing food that I grew, that I preserved, and here we are eating it for dinner when it grew in my garden 6 months ago or 2 years ago, whatever the case is. So please, even if Dehydrating Academy isn't something for you, go to solelyrested.com/dehydrate, because you will find a sign up there for all my free resources, totally free, that are going to introduce you to this wonderful world of dehydrating. And while you're there, check out Dehydrating Academy and take advantage of the early bird code to get a huge slash in that introductory price. So either way, the free stuff or the early bird code, go check it out. solelyrested.com/dehydrate. And I'm going to hopefully see a whole bunch of you on the inside of Dehydrating Academy. I am excited to see you there. So I could go on, and there are some other things I had thought about sharing, but you know what? I'm going to leave it at that. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a follow-up episode about comparing all these different things. Maybe I'll even do episodes on, I do love fermenting. Maybe I should do an episode just on fermenting too. We'll have more food preservation coming. Let's leave it at that. So thanks for listening, guys. And remember, it is easy to forget how blessed we are to live this life. So enjoy the simple, everyday efforts. It's not easy, but it is so worth it.